Right now, I know there's a dilemma amongst single people. We have more single people in this country than we've ever had. People socially think they're being connected through social media, but they're disproportionately being segregated from each other because they don't want to actually interpersonally react.
What's the single most important characteristic of a man?
They have the lens of Instagram, their fake lives from the social media perspective, but inside, if you pulled the curtain back, they're deeply flawed, arrogant, and egocentric, like all the kind of like negative pieces of psychology that we would expose.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Focal Point, where we discuss current events, things going on in society that we think need a little bit more discussion. Today, I'm joined by Mike Glover, CEO of Fieldcraft Survival, domestic terrorist, and Evan Heber.
It's true.
Yeah. Evan Heber, the alleged founder and CEO of Black Rifle Coffee. Both of you are probably bought and paid for assets of the U.S. government, given your work with the Central Intelligence Agency. Yeah. However, today we're not going to be necessarily talking about that. What? Yeah, we're not going to be talking about that. What are your thoughts on what many people are discussing and talking about for the decline of masculinity, or another way it has been phrased, the toxic nature of masculinity? Or we could look at it through the lens of the generation that is now one or two behind us, your thoughts on the world that they are entering and what they are being taught and being, I don't want to say groomed into, because I don't think that's necessarily correct, but just the lens that they now view the world through versus the lens that we viewed the world through at their age. As specifically men, since the three of us are men here.
Yeah, I think guys are completely lost in society right now. I think Gen Z, a lot of men that I train at Fieldcraft Survival, from rewilding experiences to even flat range stuff, show up not because they want to potentially train. It's because they're looking for something, especially in rewilding, where a lot of men, when we have fireside chats, are discussing with us that they're missing purpose, they're missing tribe. And I know you talked to Sebastian Younger about this, and it's a significant part of his book, Tribe, where he shares a story where he went to Restrepo and spent some time in a fire base with infantrymen. He got it because he realized, man, I missed that camaraderie. And I don't think a lot of men have camaraderie. I don't think they have friendship groups like we have, where we lean on each other.
Well, so hold on. I think it's important that we recognize that all three of us, regardless of the generation that we grew up in, had a very clear path on what we wanted to do in the communities that we went in. So that, I think, will always be unique. It's very hard, I think, to describe the camaraderie that can come from the communities that we volunteered for, were screened for, and were selected for, and have a robust amount of experience in that world. For the people, though, of our generation who didn't have that path, do you think that they are actually different than the current generation? Because I think it's important to recognize that all three of us are anomalous in the path that we took, and therefore the experiences that come from that. Did the people that we grow up with have the same lack of purpose as the current generation? And if they did, what changed?
Did you say anomalous? Mm-hmm. Why don't you use words like that when we're just like hanging out? He uses Mike, he doesn't say words like that unless he's on a podcast.
Mike is Asian, so I wanted to tie back into numbers.
Yeah, that's
so he would be with us.
I like that.
Yeah, give it a program, Evan.
Yeah, he's our quant.
Phone. Oh, no, sorry.
If we want our quant involved in the conversation, we have to tie it back into math.
It's a great question, because I think generationally, every generation of men, let's say a 20-year cycle, every generation of men deals with these kind of problems. And we are very dependently at some point in our lives tethered to our service and a very deep understanding of what tribes are, what camaraderie is, what brotherhood is. And so we recognize kind of like what that felt like. And I think in a way have gotten out of that service and kind of replicated that for ourselves in a small form. I mean, we have small groups, small friendship groups that are like mini tribes, like the teams we served on in small numbers. I don't think men who are disaffected from that understand the start point in that. I mean, a lot of men, like right now, I know there's a dilemma amongst single people. We have more single people in this country than we've ever had. People socially think they're being connected through social media, but they're disproportionately being segregated from each other because they don't want to actually interpersonally react or engage. And that's part of the problem, right? There's not a good start point. It's not like my dad taught me how to build relationships and do interpersonal things that were going to make me better as a man. So I think a lack of family units, family gatherings, traditions, community is what we're seeing. And more people are lonely, more people are by themselves in their own echo chambers on Reddit than they would actually be interpersonally, like even doing things like this where we're just hanging out and talking about things. So I think that's scary because I know I can affect my children and teaching them that. When your kids are around us, they see those engagements. But if you don't know the start point, which is most of the men that we mentor on DMs and messages, it's like there's a systemic issue going on with men right now.
What do you think, Evan?
I think it's probably not new. I don't think it's new to our generation of men. I think people, just in general, I think they're going through a significant crisis of purpose or an existential crisis. I think.
Do you think that's new, or that just kind of repeats itself for every generation?
I think the what I would say is the newfound information that we have access to, and then the distraction, the layers of what I would say is meaningless distraction, cause a lot of chaos and confusion. And then you also have the layer of social media that convinces people you have to be a certain way, and they're following social media influencers, men and women both, and they're looking at these people that are clearly they're not virtuous. They have the lens of Instagram, their fake fucking lives from the social media perspective, but inside, if you pulled the curtain back, they're deeply flawed, arrogant, and egocentric, like all the kind of like negative pieces of psychology that we would expose. I think people are looking at social media for guidance. That's not the place that you need to seek guidance. I think there's a war on masculinity, which is also part of the greater international culture war. I think there's a war on Western civilization. I think there's a war on logic and just general philosophy in general. So I think we're being targeted specifically because we represent a significant amount of energy. And if you can devalue the accomplishments of Western civilization, and then if you can devalue the accomplishments of men in what I would say is from the last 2,500 years, then you can essentially soften up your target to allow a different narrative. I think in a land where people are talking about, Che Guevara, Karl Marx, and
as
they're
heroes.
writing,
As heroes.
Yeah, they're heroes, whereas their search for meaning and purpose, where they can go and find it, they're not finding what I would say is the virtuous avenue in order to find it, because they're plugged into something that's immaterial. It's their technology device and Instagram is not going to tell you how to live your life. You have to ultimately decide who you are and how you're going to live your life. And you have to also determine, without being forced, what is good and what is evil, and then how you're going to live a virtuous life plugged into your family, your community, yourself. And if you don't do that, you're a ship without a rudder. And nobody on Instagram is going to fucking give you the guidance to do it. So I think all of those things, I don't think it's new. I think now it's just way more confusing because that fucking thing is a huge distractionary device. And it's being thrown into your room every day. Bang, 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 bang. Whereas like roll back the clock 40 years ago, if you were searching for, man's search for meaning, you would dive into the pages of a book and have to concentrate. Or you would go,
Or a
you would
community
go
or social
somewhere
circle.
to a church or to, you would interact with people in physical space. You don't do that. You scroll through Instagram, you're looking at, 6 packs and titties, and you're like, well, this is fucking awesome. This is how I'm going to live my life. And you think that, a new Submariner is going to make your life better. It's not. What? It's not.
Well, I'm not.
It's
So slightly artificial question because it's complex. In your opinion, what's the single most important characteristic of a man? If you had to pick one, like I said, complex because
Courage.
obviously you could.
Come on. Really?
yeah, 100% courage.
I think being a good father. That'll be mine.
I mean, that's a whole conversation in and of itself, what that means, but I get it.
Yeah.
I would say integrity.
Oh, we're looking at values.
Yeah.
Just not, I mean, you can, just answering the question that was asked, is what we're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Just listening, being a good listener.
Being involved in the conversation. It's a skill that a man should have.
What about not being a douchebag? Maybe that would be
That's a
what
good
I would
skill,
recommend, Evan.
When are you going to
I think you should turn around and do that to yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, when are you going to
I'll
You
do
should
that.
say that. You
do
should
that.
wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and say, "Don't be a douchebag."
What's your actual answer?
It's integrity as well. I think integrity is, as a value metric, when self-evaluating yourself and how the world looks at you. If you wake up and consciously hold that as a virtue, as a value, and you do checks and balances and you check in with yourself, having integrity, being a man of your word, those things are lost in a lot of people. And it's one thing within your realm of control that you could affect every single day. And I haven't been as virtuous as I'd like to be. But if you're holding yourself to that standard, it's not just a word on a dog tag in basic training. It's actually something that you live. And
Let's be honest, I don't think anybody is ever as virtuous as they would like to be.
yeah, of course.
It's the pursuit of the virtue that I think is
yeah.
important.
The striving for it.
So, for an 18-year-old young man who finds their way to this, what would you recommend to them to close it out? What steps would you recommend for somebody who is looking for that purpose but doesn't know where to start? They want to be virtuous. They want to have integrity. They're bombarded in all different directions. What piece of advice would you leave them with to get them oriented on a better path?
The best advice I'd give is society tells you a lot of things that you're supposed to be, and a lot of that is wrong. Like when I was very young, 17, joining the Army, becoming an adult through an experience in the military, everything that I was around was telling me if you wanted to be cool, you had to go out to the club, you had to go to the bar, you had to drink, you had to do all these men activities. And what I realized quickly when I separated from myself, because I was never a follower in that sense, and I started following my own course of action, I was more successful just because I wasn't following everybody else. And so I would say for young men who want to be successful in life, take a step back and don't just go with the flow of how society wants you to be. There's this expectation, for example, that you should be single because you got to get all of those feelings out and you got to do all those things early on, because once you're locked down in commitment, that changes the game. And I'm not saying to guys, go out there and lock yourself down or overcommit. I'm saying the structure of family, the structure of like friendship, having that structure is going to set you up for success. Like being conventional seems like a bad thing. You know, even in our backgrounds and experience in the military, being conventional was like you were too square pegged. And we were like, we thought we were more unconventional or more irregular, and so we were special. It's like actually we were just more disciplined and more conventional. We had better routines, we had family structures, we had committed relationships, we had faith in something. Those things aren't that bad. They actually will improve your life. And I wish I would have followed suit faster. I wish I would have committed in relationships sooner. I wish I would have locked myself, been more disciplined. And I think, all of that seemingly is a lot, but I think guys are lost, and we need to start those family units. I'm more squared away as a family unit than I've ever been, and I feel the same with all my friends. They all have good relationships and good family unit situations, which makes them more squared away.
What do you think, Evan?
Well, I think to talk about a piece of his advice, and then I'll layer onto it, which is just be yourself. I think he talked about not following his peer group, really trying to define who he was. I couldn't agree more. I think at a very early age, like 19, 20-ish, I just said, I don't care what other people are doing. And, what I purposely did was I essentially, at 19 years old, I was like, I'm not going to buy into anything that's current. I went and bought like 501 shrink to fit jeans and a bunch of flannels. And it was like, this is what I wear, not because I think it's cool, because it simplifies everything in my life and I don't have to participate in what I would say is the social cool pressure. And now I'm just going to define what it is that I think is the right path based on my curiosity. So I've never been wandering or a ship without a rudder. I'm very empathetic to people that are, but it's something that I've said. Till we had kids, I didn't have a TV. The only thing I would do, like typically, is like I would read, I would run, I would spend a lot of time in the mountains, and trying to understand kind of what I wanted to do, like the definition of life, like my search for purpose, and that. And I'm not saying like I understood that. I'm just saying like I just had the confidence and the courage to say I'm going to go do this, and it's not because I want to do it because everybody else thinks it's cool. It's because what is it that I want to do, and then go do it. And I've done that my entire life. So I think when you define your purpose, your essence philosophically, and you don't give a fuck what other people think, man, it's a great feeling, because you know what it is? It's freedom. Like, I don't have to live like by these rules that people, these artificial, absurd rules that people create around quite literally meaningless horseshit. Whereas the single greatest points in my life have been in like the most remote areas of the world with a fucking paperback. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I think you guys encapsulated how I feel about it too. I would advise people to spend more time determining who they are as opposed to measuring themselves against others, which is hard with the anxiety rectangle that we all carry around in our pocket. Easier said than done, but I think it nets you at a better place, and you have a foundation and a moral compass for who you are, and you're less apt to be deviated or drawn towards things that, quite frankly, I don't think provide any sense of fulfillment or purpose, but goddamn, people follow them in an unbelievable way. But baby, you guys can tell us in the comments. Thanks for turning in to this last episode of Focal Point, where Evan and I talk about important things, and Mike just answers whatever question he wants.
Haters gonna hate. Haters gonna hate.
Haters.
Hope you enjoyed that episode of Focal Point. Current events, giving you perspective. That's the value that we want to provide. If you're interested in all the things you heard, especially at the round table with a lot of perspective from experts in their field and people we want to talk to, make sure you subscribe to the links down below. Focal Point coming to you in 2024. Thanks, guys.